Hello and welcome back to another episode of the For the Property Investor podcast. And we're here with Nick Bendel with the weekly news, of course. He's the only one that can bring us the news on a weekly basis. So, Nick, welcome back. And I see you're still in a exotic place.
Yes, I'm still on Norfolk Island, here for another 2 days. It's a beautiful island, some really interesting history, some questionable internet, but the rest of it is great.
That's all right. And yeah, you keep telling us about these beautiful island, but yeah, all we're seeing is the fridge behind you. So I'm a bit disappointed. You'll have to send us some pictures.
Well, it's an historic fridge, which is why I want to show it. So the island was discovered by Captain Cook in 1774. It was uninhabited, and apparently this fridge was actually on the Endeavour with him.
Okay, cool. So, I suppose they had to try and beat the scurvy somehow.
Exactly. How's your week been?
Very busy. We've in the process of onboarding some new staff, so which we're very much looking forward to, and to be able to help service all of our clients who are screaming out at us at the moment. So yes, it's not fun having being understaffed and trying to run the business and look after clients all at the same time. So yes, we're looking forward to that. But so that's what's kept me busy, as well as onboarding new properties and leasing some as well. So got out to some open homes on the weekend in the Hunter Valley, north of Sydney. And yes, it was a gorgeous hot day, but still a nice day.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad you've had such a wonderful week. Are you ready to hear about the news that I brought for you this week?
Yes, bring it to us, Nick. What's in the news this week?
Well, liar loans are back in the news. The Advisor has reported, quote, two separate reports have shown a widespread prevalence of Australians lying about their earnings on financial applications, reigniting the need for brokers to take defensive measures, end quote. In the first survey from analytics firm FICO, 52% of Gen Z respondents thought that inflating income on mortgage applications was either normal or acceptable in some situations. In the second survey from comparison website Finder, 15% of Gen Z respondents said they had lied about their earnings on a financial application. However, some of the brokers who commented on the Advisor's article noted that it was highly unlikely that liar loans would ever be approved. One broker commented, "You can include whatever you like on paper, but the reality is that all the information is verified against pay slips, bank statements, and undergoes multiple due diligence checks." Another broker said, "We get people overinflating their income in the fact find, but we can't over-declare to a bank as they are calculating from the physical documents. I think there's a gap here between the consumer's intent to try and get approved versus the reality. We use the income they earn." Owen, you used to be a broker, and I know your friends and you're connected to many brokers around Australia. Based on your knowledge and experience, are liar loans a valid concern, or is this just a bit of a beat up?
Yeah, it's well, I'm sure the survey is correct in terms of what they're reporting. But yes, as the brokers have commented, yes, they're the filter for what actually goes through to the bank. So yes, the actual applicant might put on there they earned, you know, $500,000 a year. But they have to back that up with a piece of paper, and then and then the details from that piece of paper get verified. So, and if the verification process and from the piece of paper um, does stack up in some way, and they're not correct, then that's actually called fraud. So,
Hmm.
Yes, that's when it's a problem. So some people might think, oh, well, yes, well, I earned a big commission last, or I got my bonus paid last week or last month. So yeah, last month my income was X amount, and it's which might be more than what the average is. So yes, it's up to the brokers and the loan writers at the banks to be able to, and then the credit departments within the banks when they're processing the loans to verify this income and then actually work it out from there. So yes, very unlikely that it would actually go through to get a loan approved.
You mentioned fraud a moment ago. One broker left this comment on the advisor's story. My aggregator audits every application that I lodge, as I'm sure many do. I don't think that many brokers would be stupid enough to risk their profession and quite likely their trail book to get any application approved supported by fraudulent income docs that they knew were fraudulent. So, Owen, would it be fair to assume that if any fraudulent applications are being submitted, that this fraud would generally be initiated by the borrower rather than the broker?
Yes, as the comment made by the broker there, why would they risk their their business, their income, um, and possible legal action against themselves um, because one person is maybe knowingly or unknowingly um, committing fraud. So yes, it's the job of the broker to be able to verify all of the income information and to make sure the loan would actually service before submitting it to the bank, because they don't want to waste their time or the bank's time by submitting a loan that's not going to get approved in the first place.
Okay, well, I've got a philosophical question for you now. We rightly talk about the importance of responsible lending, but what about the importance of responsible borrowing? Should we expect consumers to tell the truth on their applications and to avoid overextending themselves?
Um, well, that's assuming that they have a certain level of financial education and financial knowledge. And unfortunately, it's not something that is focused on in terms of our education system. So people don't learn these basic concepts, and they don't know how to budget, and they don't know how to forecast for their expenses and their income, and knowing what debt to equity ratios are and loan to valuation ratios are, and yeah, some of these basic concepts that should be taught in high school at the minimum, but I think could be even taught in very basic terms in primary school. So uh, yes, we probably can't expect it's part of the law in terms of importance of with responsible lending, that the lender needs to be responsible for whether someone can afford to borrow the money they are or not. Um, but because yes, people get themselves into trouble and then cry poor and say it wasn't my fault. Yes, there's no responsibility taken by the borrower. It's impossible now, in fact.
I've never lied on a loan application, but I must confess, in the past, back when people used to carry money around with them and shop with money, there have been a few occasions in my life where I paid for something and I've been given too much change and I've knowingly pocketed the extra change. Does that make me a bad person?
Um, uh, no, I don't think so, Nick. It's it happens from time to time, and what comes around goes around. There might have been times where you might have unknowingly been shortchanged yourself, and I don't think many people would do that on purpose. But yes, I'm sure it wasn't a lot of money, Nick.
Well, thank you for absolving me of my sins. I've been carrying that guilt around with me for many years, and it's just washed off now, and I appreciate that.
Yes. Just to check in though, are we past the statute of limitations on this, or?
Oh, good question. I'm not sure. Even if I wanted to confess to this, I can't remember when and where and how much. I know I did the wrong thing. I just don't remember the precise details.
Okay. Well, if you were using actual cash, then I'm sure it was past, or before the date, because yes, not many people use cash these days, and it's
No,
been a long
well,
time.
yeah, I don't think I've used cash since the 70s.
Okay, well you're doing well. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our second story. Rental market eases slightly. The vacancy rate rose from 1% in January to 1.3% in February, according to SQM Research. However, with capital city vacancy rates ranging from no higher than 1.8% in Melbourne to as little as 0.6% in Perth and Hobart, it's clear the rental market is still favouring landlords. Hence this comment from SQM Managing Director Louis Christopher. I would not be surprised to see vacancy rates fall again in March, he said, adding that the country remains in a rental crisis driven by excess population growth and multi-year lows in dwelling completions. Okay, Owen, so rates remain low in most parts of the country, but rental growth has eased over the past year or so. Why is that?
It's if we look at there is increasing supply happening a lot more than the previous couple of years. So that is helping, and also the huge population increase that we had in the previous couple of years has reduced as well. So we're seeing a leveling off of that supply and demand, but it's still not enough, and there are areas in the country that are still heavily oversupplied, and then we've got the opposite where there's a lot of undersupply as well.
I saw some figures from SQM a few days ago. I hope I remember this correctly. Over the past 10 years, the average annual rental increase has been 5.5%. Now, I'm guessing that over the same 10-year period, the average inflation rate has probably been about 3%. And therefore, over the past 10 years, rents have been increasing faster than inflation. So they've been going up in real terms. So I'm wondering, even though vacancy rates remain low, is it the case that renters are just tapped out? They can't really afford to pay much more.
Yeah, there's that as well. It's we've seen huge increases, and it's people are looking for more affordable options, and if that means having to go further afield, then they will to find a cheaper property.
Hmm. The the national vacancy rate has been under 2% for 4 years now. Can you see any signs that it will return to the twos or even the threes in the future?
Not in the near future. We need that supply to really dramatically increase to be able to take up the current and any future demands that will come through. So it'll be a number of years, and we've got still got issues with the building industry to be able to bring that supply into the market. So yes, not anytime soon.
Hmm. And another philosophical question for you. How much of an interest should our society take in vacancy rates and the ability to find rental accommodation, do you think?
Um, I think we should take a lot of interest in it because it's a key indicator of where the stresses are in being able to have effective housing, and for people who for the population to be able to uh, have our minimum standard of housing requirements. And we there's a lot of uh, the population that are finding it stressful at the moment with higher costs of living, with groceries, as well as rent. And things need to change. It's something needs to change. And if we don't know about it, if we don't have the raw data and the figures, then yes, it's very important. We need to
Hmm.
track these things. If
Oh,
if you don't track something, then you're not going to focus on it.
What gets measured gets managed. I've heard the argument that I
Exactly.
personally find persuasive, which is everything is downstream of housing. In other words, if someone has secure housing, whether they're an owner or a renter, it makes things easier for them in terms of schooling for their children and finding a job and all the other services that happen with life. Whereas if someone is insecure in their accommodation, they're having to move around a lot. There's perpetual stress and anxiety. It affects your physical and your mental health. It affects your employment. It affects schooling for the children and a whole lot of other things. Everything is downstream of housing. So what you said a moment ago makes sense, that we as a society do need to take an interest in vacancy rates and the ability of people to find rental accommodation.
Absolutely.
Well, our final story today is this isn't just another housing cycle, says property economist. Ray White, chief economist, Nerida Conisbee, has said that discussions about the impact of interest rates and market cycles on property prices miss the bigger picture. Quote, for decades, our housing market has been driven by much deeper forces, a persistent undersupply of homes, major demographic shifts, and fundamental changes in how and where Australians want to live. This isn't just another housing cycle. It's a super cycle that has been building for years, and it's now accelerating, she said. Conisbee said this super cycle is being driven by several factors. One of them is residential construction can't keep up with our growing population. For example, we needed to build 220,000 homes last year, she said, but completed only 209,000. Building costs are rising faster than property prices, which is making it harder to fund new builds. Also, she pointed out foreign investment in local property has fallen significantly, which has made it even harder to fund new builds. And Nerida Conisbee also made the point that we're building too many three-bedders and four-bedders and not enough single-bedders, which has meant that the homes that do get built often have empty rooms, which is a very inefficient way to have our housing supply. So, Owen, you've heard the argument. Nerida Conisbee says we're in a housing super cycle. Is she right, or do you think maybe she's blowing it out of proportion?
No, we're definitely not blowing it out of proportion. We're definitely in a super something. You could say we're in a super mess. It's so yes, she is right. With all of those points, it's I've never seen a property market like this in my 25 plus years in the industry, and in all the time that I'd studied before this, yes, never heard of a property market like this before. So there's lots of reasons why, but let's focus on how to improve it. And the number one is fixing the supply issue. Um, Unfortunately, as she says, with construction costs increasing, they're increasing faster than the value of properties. So it's hard to get funding. So we actually need property prices to increase, which sounds ridiculous to a lot of people. But yes, we need to go forward um, before we can increase the whole supply. So it's yes, it's uh, definitely nothing we've seen before.
So you're arguing that if prices go up, that incentivizes and makes it easier for builders to do more building, thereby bringing more supply. So in other words, the cure for high prices is high prices.
In some way, unfortunately, yes. It's unless inflation really starts to calm down in the building supply sector, which it's not showing any sign of, then we need to, yes, if builders and developers can't secure funding so that they can actually build more properties, then everyone's going to be fighting over the current properties out there in the marketplace. And that's going to be pushing. It's one problem will fix the other eventually.
Well, one of the other issues she raised, which is interesting, I can't recall hearing anyone else talk about it, is that developers are building the wrong kind of homes, 3-bedders and 4-bedders, or too many of those and not enough single-bedders. I'm wondering first, is that a problem? And second, if it is a problem, should it be solved by government regulation or by the free market?
I mean, the free market will fix things eventually, but a bit more planning would help speed it up as well. And I think there's a lot of governments, mainly state governments, that are doing this planning right in terms of bringing in the 1 and 2 bedroom units in the cities and the metro areas, especially in Sydney and Melbourne. But we need the 3 and 4 bedders as well, out in the burbs where they're all getting built mainly. So it's probably just been easier to get those built at the moment or in recent times than it has been to be able to build the high-rise apartment blocks of 1 and 2 bedroom properties.
Well, I'm also wondering if, for a developer, the cost and difficulty of building a 3-bedder or a 4-bedder, it's probably not much more than building a 1-bedder, and yet you can sell it for significantly more, if that makes sense. And so therefore, in terms of profit margins, they probably earn a larger margin with those 3 and 4 bedroom homes than they do the single bedroom homes.
Yes, and the only difference is if we can, where they're building these 3 and 4 bedroom houses, if we can get the density higher in those areas, which is happening with a lot of duplexes and dual occupancies, where you can have a 3-bedder on one side and then there's a 1 or a 2-bedder on the other. Or in the case of duplexes, you can have a 2, a 3, or a 4-bedder on each side, and they're a mirror image of each other. And so that we can increase that supply quicker. There's also a lot more of the granny flats being put in the backyards, so we can increase supply quicker as well into the market for the rental market. And so all of these initiatives are helping, and it's improving, but just not quick enough.
I live in a 2-bedroom townhouse, and I normally have a spare room because I'm a miserable, lonely person who lives on his own. However, at the moment, I have a friend staying with me, so I have 0 spare room. So I think Nerida Conisbee would probably be happy about that.
Yes, you're doing your bit for the housing crisis, Nick.
Well, you're welcome.
Well done. Well done.
Well, in fact, now that I think about it, she is living there, but I'm actually not home. As we've discovered, I'm on Norfolk Island. So actually there is still a spare bedroom again. So maybe I'm not.
You're allowed to have a holiday, Nick.
Okay, well, thank you for forgiving me for that as well. I feel as though I've gotten quite a bit of absolution from you today, and I really appreciate that.
That's all right. So, again, thank you for bringing the news, Nick. And hopefully we'll be seeing you again on the mainland fairly soon.
This time next week, I will be on the mainland, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you again.
Fantastic.